Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, September 7th, Labor Day in the United States, holiday to celebrate labor, people forced into working labor, laborious jobs, brought about, I think, at least in most part because of unions, uh, which certainly there's plenty of anti-union sentiment in the United States, uh, often spouted by people who would be best dealt and benefited by unions. Not to say that there aren't bad unions out there or that there aren't problems with dealing with unions, but yeah, that's what today is about. Although it does seem like on some small level, people also manage to celebrate the troops on Labor Day as much as they seem to celebrate the troops in the United States every day or every holiday, which, like, I guess you could make a tenuous argument that there might have been some labor movement started because of cooperation taught by veterans, or by the women who were who took over a lot of jobs during the major wars, World War One, World War Two. That might also have led to some labor movements, certainly. But there was also violent, intentional government fighting against that stuff. Okay, we have forest craft, and let me come over here to the solo thing. What I need to do is I need to uncheck the checkbox at this point, because there is just this bloodcraft deck that needs to be done, and then there's a swordcraft, dragoncraft, and havencraft path that needs to be done, and I just won't really be able to get this complete stamp until I can figure out some way to build a deck that actually beats this, beats that challenge. So I think we're at the point where we're done with this. So I'm gonna uncheck that, and Shadowcraft might work. Runecraft will definitely not work, and it was 20 anyways. So win one private match is honestly as difficult, if not more difficult. Otherwise, we've got some more animated basic cards and some more gold, and we are set nicely here, and we are just working our way towards getting the decent amount of cards for Fortune's Hand before the next expansion happens, which I think we probably are within like 3 weeks of the next expansion happening. As for the accountability section, I am teetering between having room on my hard drive and not. I'm either a few days away from getting the last part of my new computer, or a week or 10 days away from getting the last part of my computer, the power supply in particular. You definitely need that. So we're still in a situation there where the power supply, until I have it, I can't put together my computer. But I am working on my other project, which was, I think they're called battle stations, but it's a Raspberry Pi in basically a briefcase at this point. I changed the venue of it. It originally was going to be in a wooden art box. It was a lot actually smaller than the briefcase in comparison, and the briefcase is a plastic briefcase, so it is night and day difference between drilling through a plastic siding versus drilling through even cheap particle board wood. Alright, we need to do another open 6. So let's do this. And who do we really need to improve upon? Like, let's take a look here. Shadowverse, I think we already kind of done. Portalcraft would make a good sense. Swordcraft would make sense. Runecraft would make sense. I think Runecraft actually makes a lot of sense. So yeah, there's. I'm working quickly as hard as I can to finish that project, since it had been on the back burner for a while, for like a year, because I had hurt my hand working on all the wood parts, putting in screws and hinges and just trying to do a lot of woodworking hardware stuff that I was not well suited to try, frankly, and I got too ambitious. But then after I hurt my hand, I had hurt my back, and so I this last 12 months and last year has been just a cavalcade of "you're getting old, son," basically. You're getting older and unhealthier is the message my body was sending me. Alright, so this is a rush, fanfare 8, evolve for 0 during your turn. Whenever a follower attacks, an enemy destroys an enemy. Whenever this follower attacks and destroys an enemy follower, if that follower is not destroyed, if this follower is not destroyed, recover 2 play points and gain the ability to attack 2 times this turn. Which that might be useful at some point. So Diamond Paladin potential with Swordcraft, and then the Forest Princess I think I already have, so that's not the best bet. I don't think I have Awakened Gaia. At the end of your turn, if at least 4 cards are played, subtract 4 from the cost of this card, which would still make it an 8, which means I don't know how you would do that. Well, no, what you'd have to do is you'd have to have this in your hand for 1 turn, subtract 4 for it, then in the next turn play 4 more cards and subtract 4 more, and then you can play it for 4, or some combination within there in which it would take 2 turns. This destroys 4 random enemy followers. That's a decent card, but not something amazingly interesting. And then Desert Paladin. I don't think we have this. If there are no allied great trees in play, summon it. If it puts a Natrian great tree. I wish they'd drop the Natrian part, or just in period great tree. They really should just drop it down to great tree for the localization, I would say. Alright, next we have Wheel of Fortune. Summon the Wheel of Misfortune and banish this follower. If Resonance is activated at the start of your opponent's turn, if Resonance is activated, gain +1/+1 and destroy a random enemy follower. What does Wheel of Misfortune do? It's a crystal. Countdown at the start of your turn. Activate one of the following effects. Add 1 cost to all cards in your hand at the end of the turn. -2/-2. Summon an analyzing artifact. The same effect will not activate twice. So Wheel of Misfortune is particularly bad, but you just have to be careful not to play it. And then here we have Emerith Dream Emissary. Give another follower reward. Then if it evolves, give it +1/+1. Draw a card and recover 1 play point. That sounds slightly interesting. Which do we want? I kind of feel like I want to lean this direction with Swordcraft, although I don't think I have either one of these or either one of these. It would be kind of silly to get Forestcraft, so let's go with Portalcraft. Okay. Particularly since we know we don't have a decent chance of actually getting one of those Phantom cards anyways. And we might see better Phantom cards. So, all Portalcraft cards now, which might be fairly redundant, all Portalcraft and neutral cards. Worth pointing that out. So, this may very well have been a huge mistake, because I may have all of the Portalcraft cards, because Portalcraft may not be particularly a fleshed out leader, since he was almost certainly added later. Right, well, we got one of interest. Mammoth Gods Coliseum. Destroy all followers except a random enemy follower with the highest attack. Then if 4 followers have been destroyed, summon Imperial Mammoth. Evolved, it has Rush. Unevolved, it has Rush. Was Imperial Mammoth a 7 mana 6/7 neutral card? Is this a neutral card? Yeah. Okay, so we could use that in a lot of places, although it is a 9 mana cost card too. We still are in a place where a lot of these cards from previous expansions are fewer and far between. And this is the Phantom Pack, so all of these are going to be gold or more. So we have the Changewing Cherub, which I really wish there was some indicator here whether we actually owned a copy of this first. And then here we have Amaranth Dream Emissary. And then we have Laser Shell Tortoise. Put a Machina and Natural follower from your hand into play. Give it Rush. And the following effect. At the end of your turn, return the follower to your hand. This is almost certainly a reference to like Turtle Launcher from Yu-Gi-Oh! Which might be a reference to something else. Artifact Call. Put a random artifact card from your deck into your hand. If Restless is activated, put 2 in. Let's see. Lazura Gateway Homunculus. Ward Enhanced 9. Randomly put 1 cost Portalcraft from your deck into play. Activate the fanfare effects, excluding choose or target effects. Evolve, give an ally following the effect. The next time this takes damage, reduce it to 0. I will say, though, calling this anime girl a homunculus doesn't really mean anything to me, because, yeah, when I think homunculus, I think the first run of Full Metal Alchemist, not Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, although both would be equally applicable, and all of those homunculuses seem to look fairly inhuman, at least slightly inhuman, even in their human form, with the exception, I guess, of a couple of characters who definitely were secret characters that turned out to be homunculus. Here we have Baronator. Whenever an allied Machina and Natural follow attacks, recover 1 play point at the end of your turn. If you have at least 1 play point, deal 5 damage to random enemy follower. Then if you have at least 3, deal 3 damage to all. That's not a terrible card. And this is World Uprooted. And I feel like the expansion World Uprooted particularly introduced the Machina and Natural cards as concepts, which I think probably drastically changed the game. So I'd probably take Baronator over a actual tarot card of the fortune, but this would be the one to actually take. It's the one you should take. Unfortunately, you don't get to keep all of these, so you're not in as nice of a position as you would like. But we did get that automatically. So all of this pack wasn't new, all of this pack wasn't new. Even the animated ones seem to not be new. But this was new, and this was new, and the animated version of this was new. Now, that doesn't mean inherently that we're not getting like the 3rd copy of some cards, but that's it. And see, none of the Phantom card packs are getting marked as new because you don't really get to hold on to them. So this is just every card in the deck. So we need to just decide which cards do we want to get rid of. 8 to put a Paradigm Shift in your hand. Paradigm Shift is a 7 spell. Which, that seems like that would be a very late game card, so I think we can get rid of that. And We could probably get rid of that. Let's see. Maybe we would want to get rid of any Machina cards or something like that. We're not probably playing too much of a puppet deck, so if I wanted to get rid of these 4 puppet cards, that might work fairly well too. Although, not sure that inherently is what we should do. We need to look at the other cards. Let's see if we can find one card that really would benefit of getting rid of it. See, this gives you a paradigm shift too, so why have such a high card give you a paradigm shift when you can get paradigm shifts earlier? I was building a Forestcraft deck for rotation, and it did occur to me that there is this case of let's see, I guess focus. There is this case where you could make a Forestcraft deck that was not so focused on playing fairies, and instead was focused on playing a different character that is a little bit stronger. So I imagine it is a gameplay style for Forestcraft where you're playing something that's closer to a 3 or 4 mana creature. It takes a little bit longer to get that momentum in that kind of deck, but there is actually enough synergy there. I would expect to see at least 2 or 3 styles of gameplay in every leader class for every rotation. Ideally, you'd want to see at least 2 or 3 of those. So yeah, as for to wrap up the accountability section, I have been playing a little bit of Battleship Brigade. The story seems to be so overemphasized. It is really just crazy. And you just don't get into the game very much. I'm about at the point that feels like it could be the end of the story, but honestly I wouldn't be surprised if there was a whole second chapter, extra chapter. It's actually, we know there's an extra chapter. The question I guess would really be, is it a chapter as in a wrap-up chapter in which you fight the final bosses fairly quickly, or is it going to be a really long thing? So, alright, we should just go through the video game news. There's no reason for this stream to be longer than it is. There's not a ton of video game news on a Monday anyways. And so we'll just burn through this. We'll do this, and then we'll do the tournament. Shadowverse's tournaments come very frequently, and it really is getting fairly crazy around the idea of just trying to play everything. I'm hoping with the elimination of the daily quests that focus around doing the solo mission and overlapping the daily quest instead with just regular gameplay, there's a different way that can happen. I hope that makes it an easier experience. here's that anime girl. I forget the name of it. I could tell the general spoiler of the story, but then I'd be spoiling the story. The melancholy of Haru Suzuya, I believe, is the name of the anime. So that would be Haru Suzuya. I could be misspelling that. It could be Haru Suzuka or something like that.
Verifying access.
Okay. So now what do we want to do to evolve? This would do 3.
Begin.
And so we'll just kill that.
Enemy identified.
What does this do? Returns it at the end of the turn.
Enemy
So there's no
identified.
reason to do that. So we'll just attack here, and attack here. So yeah, I'm looking at my Twitter. Major Nelson says Happy Labor Day. Double Fine says Happy Labor Day. We'll probably get a few more people saying that. I don't think there's probably going to be any major controversies around saying that. Yeah, you can kind of get away with just saying happy anything as long as it's not too controversial holiday. Generally speaking, I think in the United States people don't really have any dislike of Labor Day anyways. Alright, paradigm shift, bifurcating. Let's do that one. What do we want to do now? Evolve this, I guess. We can evolve this out and play fairly easily. Okay. I suppose it's worth mentioning that Libretro put out a video showing off their web player, which is web.libretro, libretro.com. It basically lets you run the cores from a website. It's probably not going to run anything super modern. I severely doubt you're going to run into a what would be a good example? I severely doubt you're going to be able to run like a Nintendo 64 game or something like that on the web player, but you would probably be able to play any kind of like arcade games or elements like that fairly easily. And it is, I guess, an easy way, if you don't have administrator rights, to install Libretro, but you still would have to have the ROM, but I suppose you could potentially plug in a USB thumb drive with a bunch of ROMs, and then use the web player for that. But I think most people are not in that kind of situation. Summon this. Summon something. Okay. Bane and Ward. And just end the turn there. I'm trying hard not to just burn out on all my cards because my cards aren't particularly well suited for what I've got. But I really, my cards should be just as good as anyone else's cards, but apparently they aren't. It may just be that Portalcraft as a character is just weak right now in rotation, and nothing you do is really going to fix that. Right. Give an allied follower.
Twice the training. Food tastes best when you're hungry.
Yeah, I think that's about as much as I can do. I mean, I can play this and heal myself for one, but I think I've lost. Moving on, TechRaptor has Sin Reloaded has been announced by Realms Deep trailer, through a Realms Deep trailer. So this is Night Dive bringing back Sin, which was kind of like, I think, the Half-Life before Half-Life. It might be a weird game certainly now to try and re-release, but everything's getting re-released, and I think people will have some love for Sin, but I think also there was some spin-off other Sin games that really didn't work. There was an anime made based on Sin that was particularly bad. I don't think the story really revolves much around Sin in any way that, like, the game named Messiah really focused too much on talking about any Messiah of any kind. There's certainly, in my mind, probably a difference between trying to play something like Sin Reloaded when I never played Sin in the first place, and playing Black Mesa, which was a full, like, rebuild of Half-Life 1. And honestly, I don't even know if Half-Life is particularly as relevant as it once was. TechRaptor has the Marvel Avengers review. I imagine this is bad. From everything I've heard, this is not really a great game. Now, there might be opportunities, certainly, to take the skins and the basic core components of this game and turn those elements into a single player game by a different name. But also, I would imagine there's been enough criticism around the way the characters look, since they don't have the likeness of the actors, that I don't think people would be particularly happy playing a different game with the characters the way they look. So you'd probably have to retexture everybody anyways. And then here they've sent out a screenshot, or TechRaptor has made a screenshot showing off Black Widow's backside and a enemy I don't recognize it. Taskmaster, I guess, is who that is. They gave it 7.0. Marvel Avengers has a great campaign that's held back by repetitive multiplayer aspects, Pro's stellar storyline, Kamala Khan's character arc, so they liked Kamala Khan. I think you probably could like Kamala Khan's story arc, but I think you could also very much feel like it is just forced in there, and not what you really were looking for as a game. Yeah, if Kamala Khan had been replaced with Spider-Man, which almost certainly, I think at some point it would have been replaced by Spider-Man, there would have been a difference there. If Resonance is activated for you, summon an enemy Wheel of Misfortune and banish this follower. Okay, so this actually leaves this here, gives him a Wheel of Misfortune. And this summons an enemy analyzing artifact. Oh, so that actually works fairly nicely. Didn't realize that. The other pros they have are fun combat encounters, which I heard they were repetitive, and new takes on familiar characters. Cons are frame rate drops, repetitive levels, and poor matchmaking systems.
I could never set foot in the sun.
Let's see. Attack here. Attack here. Like, I did lose a game recently because I just failed to attack, and I would have totally won if I'd been paying more attention.
Is this all I can do?
So yeah, no surprises there as far as transform an enemy follower, amulet, and the Locos teddy bear. I don't see a reason why I'd want to do that. So would this work? Would this work?
You don't
Let's
find
just play
gizmos
that.
like this every millennium.
Can we finally evolve this?
Begin.
That's a weird card in the fact that it just doesn't have any attack at all. The IGDA put out this tweet. ICO's news age-appropriate design code went into force last Wednesday with a 12-minute transition period. Digital services need to provide children with built-in baseline of data protection when they download a new app or visit a website. See hashtag children's code. This is the International Information Commission Office. I have no idea who this is, though. Like, must be a UK organization. Alright. Can this work? This can work. We can do that. We can do this. We can evolve this. We can attack that.
My armor has been pierced.
We can attack that. And we can end the turn. So here's ICO's website, and immediately you have half the screen taken up with a cookie pop-up. So they want your information. And then if I use my element zapper, I can get to it. It says ICO is the UK's independent authority set up to uphold information rights of the public interest, promoting openness by public bodies and privacy for individuals. And it does look like a government website under the Open Government License 3.0. Haven't heard of that one. So, yeah, it's some UK thing, which we are definitely with Brexit in a weird position where I wouldn't be surprised if there's fewer people willing to actually put any focus out or put any see. Whenever in follow attacks, recover 1 play point. Alright, well, recover 1 play point. Whenever an allied mark of the nature follows attack, recover 1 play point. Well, why am I not recovering play points then? Oh, because that was a Portalcraft character. Never mind. Well, that was stupid.
Brilliant technique.
What to paint? What to capture?
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be surprised if we see less adherence to UK rules and more adherence to European Union rules, or whatever is just the easiest, most restrictive rules out there for that general region to release under. I doubt too many people are going to spend a lot of time following UK rules and then ignore European Union rules. Okay, so we got another rush that we can do here. And got, let's see. Do that, I guess. I should have attacked that one. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Epic is attempting to have Fortnite reinstated on the App Store by filing a preliminary injunction against Apple on September 28th, 2020. I think that's pretty much all they need to. You need to know is that they've said that they're going to file an injunction, and if my observation of other legal cases are accurate, the injunction probably will be delayed or done at the very last second at the very most, and there will just be no real resolution of anything anytime soon. I don't think that there really is an argument to be made here that would get that injunction passed. Like, the first judgment has already come down and said that this is a problem of Epic's own making, and they're not gonna just get special treatment through the government or through the judicial system. If anything, the judicial system is notoriously well balanced to make sure everybody is somewhat equally miserable at the end of the day, with perhaps the judicial system itself being the only real victors in the process. Moving on, we have a Gematsu article. Minecraft for PS4 update is going to add PlayStation VR support this in September. I think this probably will be a fairly flippant addition, frankly. I doubt it's going to feel like a custom and well-designed experience to play Minecraft in VR. There might be some small argument around having a VR headset and playing Minecraft, but I can't really think of it. They've moderately well been able to make Minecraft work with controllers, but it clearly is a game that first and foremost was designed to be played with a mouse and keyboard, and it is certainly silly to be snobbish about playing Minecraft, such a low resolution kids game, with mouse and keyboard, but it really is the way to do it. And sure, if you were going to make Minecraft too, you very well might think about putting in more controller support, but I imagine you'd think about doing a lot of things different. If you have at least 3 play points, draw 2 instead of 3, and restore 2 defense to your leader. TechRaptor has an article here. A newly announced Indian Battle Royale, FAUG, is mired in controversy. And I wonder if this is because India just banned PUBG. Let's see. Regarding its design, setup, design, and presentation. Let's see. The concert will take place in the Galwan Valley, a border area between India and China, which has been a site of a lethal standoff between two countries. I believe this lethal standoff they're talking about is actually a fist fight that they were either throwing rocks or fist fighting. They weren't even shooting each other because they were actively not trying to start a war, and they frankly just hate each other so much that and have so much animosity against each other that the fist fight turned into a lethal battle. Let's see. 20% of the game's revenue will be donated to the Bharat Ki Veer Trust for Indian soldiers. So this, you definitely know that this is a very like pro-propaganda, pro-India game. Not that I inherently would disagree with siding with India against China in a lot of conflicts, but it may just be so on the nose that it's kind of ridiculous. It also could be that the controversy here is being propped up by, you know, heck, let's just name a spade, in Chinese bots. We know they're out there. Well, even if the bots actually are humans putting negative reviews, they are still effectively bots in the fact that they are intentionally trying to be pro-Chinese government for their own for propaganda reasons, and for their own perhaps slightly brainwashed jingoistic reasons. Let's see, there were some allegations that the artwork was plagiarized. However, Incore says it officially bought the license to use the image from Shutterstock. Says the artwork is a placeholder image and the official in-game artwork and title screen will be released soon. It kind of feels like FAUG is probably just a troll game or a low-effort game that is being rushed out as soon as possible. So really would just come down to whether you trusted in-core games more than anything else. And I imagine the Shutterstock did not include the Indian badge. They probably added that themselves, so that it's not the lowest of the lowest effort. Destroy an enemy follower then deal X damage to a random enemy. X equals to the follower's attack. I mean, we could do that for 5. Is that a great use of our time, though? Okay. So we destroy this, and then that, and then in the turn. Yeah, if it weren't for the fact that PUBG was banned from India, this is a game that has really no relevancy. There's really no reason to talk about this at all. We will eventually see some kind of PUBG competitor, particularly from what I hear. PUBG was basically the babysitter for most Indian parents, so the government banning it probably was in direct disagreement with parents and the children and the citizens of India. Which, okay, that I'm just gonna do this, and then this,
verifying access,
and then in the turn. And that's gonna get me cards. Moving on, TechRaptor has a review for Star Renegades, which looks like, yeah, it's a turn-based RPG. Doesn't look particularly well animated. It's also another one of these games I've never heard of, so they seem to really pop up. They gave it an 8.0. Star Renegades takes a familiar genre and story, but alters them dramatically with a unique combat system. Pros, a unique combat system, absolutely hilarious, great upgrade system. Cons, a lack of exploration, and progressing environment is hard. So, okay, it doesn't look like this game is out yet, but Star Renegades might be one to look for. I think at this point we've had our 3 losses, so the possibility of getting one of the Phantom cards has already been lost. But we still could get 2 upgrades and potentially get a bigger reward, which the bigger rewards might give me a few more gold. So there's no real reason to quit. But this game sometimes does feel a lot like it's dangerously close to hitting some tournaments that are not worth continuing and playing, and you might be better off just saving yourself time and conceding. I think I probably should have not had these cards in the deck, but there's also no modifications as far as I can tell to your deck. Once you lock it in, you lock it in. Where a gameplay mode where you had a side table and could switch things around might be appreciated. Magic had that, and I think that does let you make adjustments amongst the 5 games. I wanted to see this guy's name. Can you do that? Here we are. Do it, yeah. So, yeah, this one has like a really high symbol here, which looks like they're a pretty great game player of Shadowverse. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Sweet Tooth, which looks like one of those cell phone games, physics games. You're apparently adjusting the characters to switch between different shapes, so ball and square. So there might be a little bit of a idea there, but it's kind of really just a braking system by the looks of it. This is $2.39, 5 achievements, English only. It doesn't really seem like there's enough here for me to criticize. More and more, it does feel like I'm running into games that I'm covering that are harder and harder to criticize because there's just kind of nothing going on. Mashable has this article, and I had seen this on Reddit also. Guy runs Doom on a pregnancy test. Apparently pregnancy tests that now have extremely low resolution screens. And I kind of have to question that, like, in chopping up a screen, if you're getting something that's like 1/4 of an inch by maybe 1/8 of an inch tall, do you really need something like that? But it might be also the pregnancy tests. I haven't looked at the price of them lately, but it might be that they are just so marked up that putting in a screen that's really only worth about $250 and marking it up $25 might be a good idea. I really am interested though as far as how he connected to it. He's definitely run some visual filter down on this screen, so it is just displaying black and white pixels and effectively a very short draw distance. Here is a better view of it. There seems to be a lot of noise in his breaking it down per pixel. And I would say this screen also seems to have round pixels instead of square pixels, which makes it look fairly bad too. You replace the pregnancy test CPU and LCD, essentially turning it into a much more powerful computer. Well, then at what point, like, this really is just a magic trick at this point, because if you've replaced the CPU with what looks like a Stemma trinket board, it would be my guess, and you put a new screen in there, then all you've done is cram the screen inside a pregnancy test. So clearly this is more of a trick than anything else. It would have been way more interesting had I read this article first, if the way this broke down was it was a FTDI connection to the pregnancy test, and you are actually getting into the chip of the pregnancy test, which is probably a very custom chip that does only like a very simplistic thing, and you are reprogramming it. Like, honestly, I don't think you need any circuitry in a pregnancy test at all. The way it usually goes anyways is that if you test positive on a pregnancy test, they're going to want you to wait a couple days and test again anyways, and at that point the doctors are going to go, okay, you're pregnant, or at least it seems they're pregnant, now just live your life for the next 10 months or so and see how the pregnancy goes. They're really not going to want to do anything with you per se before that. They may say take some vitamins, take some calcium, maybe things like that, but I'm not even sure calcium is recommended, but yeah, there is certainly a level of desperation in a lot of couples. I won't say specifically women, but just couples in general, when they're trying to get pregnant, because like a lot of people have a lot of trouble getting pregnant. A lot of people have a lot of miscarriages and don't ever talk about it and admit it, and then they often see via success bias and survivor bias a lot of other people just accidentally or unintentionally get pregnant, and it is fairly random. I would say there is also kind of an inherent unfairness, unfortunately, in the fact that the most successful and most prepared parents would be older, obviously, because they would have had to gain success and spend time there, and aged and matured and all of that. And because they're older, they have a tendency to have more trouble getting pregnant, whereas the least successful and the least prepared parents out there are the stereotypical story of teenagers on prom night getting pregnant in their first sexual encounter.
Accept harmony.
Guess what I want to do here is do this.
Mayday, mayday!
And then just end the turn. Yeah. Next, we have a game on Steam, The Girl of Glass, A Summer Bird's Tale, The Journey Begins, which this looks like it is a point-and-click adventure, but this is possibly a tutorial or a demo of a point-and-click adventure. Yes, it is. So, it's free, but the real game comes out September 22nd, English full audio. There was an anime where there were these characters that were very uniquely animated, and I would say, personally, I thought beautifully animated, of characters that were kind of made out of glass. Not quite with this blue style. It was more of a CG, almost prism glass, colorful style to it. But the idea of a girl being made out of glass is something you would have to play around with a little bit to find out what the reasoning behind that or what that adds to a story. Let's see. Can we do this? We can do this. We can rush against this. We can do this. Machina or Natra. We could attack with this, but it wouldn't do anything. Next, we have a game on Steam called Lost Gems, which looks like a box pushing puzzle game. Maybe a laser light beam game. It seems to be a little too simplistic for my liking. Almost seems like you're playing almost a tower defense game, except for you're not playing as the towers. Yeah, this is $6.29, several languages. Yeah, it just doesn't seem polished enough as a puzzle game to catch my attention these days. I've kind of burned out on most polished games, more simplistic puzzle games, not polished games. Okay. Well, I've often mentioned the cell phone game Destiny Child that I play that has the lewd anime waifu characters. That they're fairly lewd if you get the App Store version and don't use the uncensored patch. Well, they've decided to go and start pre-registering for a service called TapTap, which I've never heard about. It's probably more from a Korean perspective because Destiny Child is made by Shift Up, a Korean company. But here you can see this is Mona in her like swimsuit image being shown, and let's see, here is a new character that was introduced in the global Billy, and you can see, yeah, lewd, lots of bikinis, lots of skin showing, not any major nudity. There's maybe a few characters that have a nip slip here and there, but for a gacha game that is trying to get all of the money you can get, it's actually incredibly generous and works incredibly well as a game. And it's the only game I've been able to consistently play since I played Adventure Town for several years and had pretty much done everything you could have done with Adventure Town after the first year. You cannot really burn out on Destiny Child because they are constantly every month adding new elements and new characters and new things to do, new storylines, new things. They cycle pretty much every month between either having a Ragnarok break, a narrative story break, or a world boss break. So there's a major event every month that cycles around. And it is worth mentioning that they are doing a pre-registration event where you get rewards. So even if you're playing it on the Google Play Store version, you get the rewards for pre-registering here. And if you've never played the game before, pre-registering on TapTap will give you some decent rewards to start you playing. That's as much as I'll go into as far as Destiny Child, but I will say it is still very much one of the best games on Android if you're willing to play a game with anime waifu characters that are nicely animated. If you're not, then you need not apply but you're probably missing out if you're. But yeah, I could certainly see a lot of people. Like you really shouldn't be playing Destiny Child at work, and if you're playing all the games on your cell phone at work, that there'd be a problem there. Or if you are just surrounded by children all day, you wouldn't want somebody looking over your shoulder playing it. It probably is a game that would be well suited if there was a secondary lock on it. But on the other hand, I will also say, if you have the censored version and you have a 17, 18-year-old kid that wants to play it, you'd be fine really letting them look at it. They will have seen a lot worse on the internet by that point. Speaking of worse on the internet, here we have yet another H-Sniper World War II asset flip low effort game. Anime girls in World War II scenes, and there's a lot of focus in these screenshots of the characters being headshot in bikinis. This is 69 cents discounted. There's a bundle here of 18 different other games for $10.67. There's a bundle here of 12 other games, 11 items for $13.12. Whole bunch of languages they claim to support in full audio. This really is the developer that more than any other developer should be kicked off of Steam. Like they really have no business doing business with Valve, and Valve has no business doing with them. But I bet they get a decent number of sales for streamers and YouTubers. The Last of Waifus, name confusion with The Last of Us, Anime Standing, Waifu Hell, Anime Redemption, Waifu Horror. It's like this one developer is the worst. And they've only published like 10 games, but they've certainly encouraged other people to publish very similar games. And I wouldn't be surprised if they published the same games under different names. I can't evolve that, so let's instead do this.
To unify nature and machine.
Then end the turn. Konnichiwa Games. That's. And see, there's no way to.
Alright, troops,
Like.
get ready for war.
There you go. Let's do this. Let's come over here. Report this creator. Contains content that's partially offensive, intended to shock or discuss videos. Copyright. So if you were to click offensive, you don't get a second subsection here. Or click copyright, you don't get a separate subsection. So if I typed in here, this developer is offensive because they make low quality games and flood the Steam market with them fairly frequently, would the libertarian people in charge of Valve Store really care about that? Like, patently offensive or intended to shock or disgust viewers. I imagine these games are not under what they would call patently offensive by the scale of video games, because I don't think there's anything in here that is just so incredible. It's not like a Saw movie in video game format. It's not a snuff film in video game format. So I think there probably would be no action there if I was to really report them. And also, I definitely wouldn't want to be the person to report anybody. As a video game journalist, I think, in particular, as I consider myself that at least somewhat, I would leave that to the normal people, as it were. Leave that decision to the masses instead of pushing for what would effectively be censorship. I think personally, as a news reporter and journalist and video game reviewer, wrapping myself up in all of those labels, it is particularly not my position to to push for censorship. If it's anyone's position to push for that, it needs to be an uninterested party. And in a weird way, I'm kind of more interested than the average person. Moving on, we have a Komatsu article here. Intergram X Rukishi 07 project latest information presentation set for September 10th. Never heard of these. They look like visual novels. Apparently they might be from the When They Cry series. Yeah, I guess they are. So, yeah. An announcement for an announcement, as we often get in particularly Japanese games. Let's play this. I really am just doing terrible. I can't really tell you why I'm doing so terrible on this deck that was built. Like it really does kind of just feel like it's random on the cards you get, and then it's random based on how much you'll win. Next we have a game on Steam called Picross for a Cause. That's highly suspect. It does look like it's just a Picross game in black and white. Well, there is some color apparently in some of them, if you choose to use color, or maybe you have to use color in some of them. It's $4.99, and they say 100% of the developers' proceeds will be donated to the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, America's premier legal organization fighting for racial justice. English only, 6 achievements. This is an interesting concept that I think Valve needs to take control of and embrace if they're going to let that happen. The Humble Bundle certainly has been doing things like that for a very long time, but Valve has never really tried to. I should have evolved this first.
Accept harmony.
So there's there's a there's just a ton of possible fraud in this idea that would need to be addressed, because I 100% don't know if this is the case or not, and there's no way to confirm this as someone who would purchase this game at a fairly high markup. Whereas if Valve did come out in the same way that YouTube came out and said, hey, you can choose a charity and have all of the donations for this video go to this charity, I think that's how YouTube eventually settled on that. I don't think you can specifically label a video as to say all ad revenue for this video goes to a specific charity, though, and maybe that would be the next step in which YouTube would do something like that. It also benefits Valve to potentially make a list of charities they're willing to give to and use as tax write-offs for themselves, and then have like a special button or a special icon saying that this is a charity game. 100% of developer proceeds can be twisted a lot of different ways. Let's see, if I was going to report this, I could see you have fraud on a specific game. Software fraudulently attempts to gather sensitive information such as your Steam credentials or financial data, e.g. credit card information. Legal violation software contains customer's computer in an unexpected and harmful ways. That's harmful. Contains content that legals the laws in your jurisdiction, child exploitation. Adult content considers adult content not labeled or age gated, and then defamatory. So once again, you'd have to click like fraud here, and you'd have to fill in the form to say, hey, I think that this should be looked into, and it should be looked into, certainly. But once again, I don't think it's my place to flag a game like that. Maybe I'm just taking the coward's way out on that subject too.
Shutting down.
I should look and see what their ability is before I attack. But assuming everything is on the up and up, it's still a $5 game for a very basic Picross game that's not really worth $5. I would still definitely also recommend just going through Humble Bundle. There we go. So exactly 0 wins. And we'll go through here and we get 70 gold for 4 tickets, which is pretty bad. Let's see. How does that really break down? We spent 4 tickets, which would have been 600 gold. We got 70 back. So we lost 530 gold just then, or the equivalent of that. And then we need to do arena, and we have a free entry, and I have this swordcraft and this forcecraft deck that I've built, and then pretty much all these other rotation decks are not worth playing, as far as I think. So I'll play the forcecraft just because I don't think I've shown it off, but I don't think it was amazingly successful, and honestly I don't think I'm just ever going to be amazingly successful on these tournaments until I can find the extra time to build the decks up. And see, we're getting fairly high up in the levels. Next we have a game on Steam called Glitch Escape, which looks to me like it's a platforming game. It kind of looks like it has that little girl that was in that game that looked slightly interesting and then got reviewed fairly badly. Seems like perhaps that 3D model of that character has been put on a Steam storefront. But otherwise, this does just look like one of those parkour asset flip games that are unfortunately becoming more prevalent and do run into problems. This was a student project though, so I guess we can put it on the wish list. English full audio. Is this from the same developer though? No, I don't see any mention of the other game I'm thinking of. So but yeah, this probably is a game worth mentioning. I need to find a hard date specifically in which I want to celebrate student projects. Should I do that at the beginning of school year? I would have just missed that this year. Should I do it at the end of a school year to inspire? Yeah, it would almost certainly have to be at the end of the school year or some specific other time. Is December really the right time to do something like that? Probably not, but it's an interesting thought. I could think perhaps if we have a second Halloween in like February, and then April would probably be a great month to look at student projects. Yeah, somewhere around the 4th, 5th, 6th months, somewhere around there. There could be a theme month, and it probably wouldn't even be a full theme month. It would probably just be a small section of looking through student projects for a week or so,
Let's play.
and
Help me,
that would be it. Gamatsu has an article here. Pop and Music Lively announced for PC,
Gizmos like this
which
every millennium.
is a Konami game with apparently only 5 Konami songs at the moment. I don't know if these songs really will make it to the West though, or if this is just a Japanese game available only in Japan on Steam. Yeah, it seems like it's not even on Steam. It seems like you have to actually go to a Konami website. See, the problem with copyright music copyright, particularly in Japan, is that it's just impossible to get all the clearances and the approvals that you would want to get. So you do put yourself in this weird position where there's a very bad chance that you would be able to use any music from a Japanese cut of a game to another, to a Western cut of a game.
Oh, silly nature will I'll teach you.
And if anything, it almost certainly has hurt the popularity of things, of Japanese music in particular. You have some J-pop and some music that shows up in anime that has made it to the West, but as far as like Japanese country singers, which there's a certain number of that, and Japanese pop singers and rappers and rockers and just all the other genres you'd expect for people to sing in any country, those songs don't seem to make it
Let's play.
to the West ever, and that's fairly weird considering how karaoke is so popular.
Impossible.
You would expect there to be more you would expect there to be more that makes it out of a lot of countries. And same as, I guess you could say, for like Gangnam Style being the only like major pop hit song out of, I think, Korea. Of course, a lot of that is also language too. Like, very few people are willing to listen to songs that are where the words are spoken in a different language, which is kind of ridiculous considering how most people don't pay attention to the lyrics in songs anyways. But then also, in the United States particular, you have the music industry, the incredibly corrupt, the incredibly badly run and badly designed industry of the music industry, just promoting their winners over and over again and pushing their winners over and over again and making sure that only their songs get played on the radio. Moving on, we have this week's Japanese game releases: Metal Max Zero Reborn, Metal Max Zero Reborn, Tomoyo After It's a Wonderful Life CS edition for Switch, and more. So, yeah, reading that title is not useful. Metal Max Zero Reborn for PS4 and Switch, Project Cars for PS4, SnowRunner for PS4, and Tomoyo After It's a Wonderful Life CS edition for Switch. And then whole bunch of digital things: Bacon Switch, Button Up, Cool Control Ultimate Edition.
May the forest be at peace. Hey, let's play. Hey, let's play.
This is the end.
Fairies, don't push. Help me, fairies.
What arrogance.
Let's see, what else do we want to do? I mean, I can play that, and I guess I should play that. Let's see. D-leveled for the Switch and PC. Never heard of that, but it's on Steam, so I'll look at it. Fight and Rage. G Mode Archives 15. Chrysanthemum Kuroshi. Himi Hibi Princess Days for Switch. Mino Ria for PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. Imo Astray. That's the only one that even is mentioned Xbox One. Runestone Keeper for the Switch, and Urban Trial Tricky for the Switch. I almost wonder if it is a case that there is a considerable number of games in Japan that are available for the Xbox One, usually, but they don't even bother to release an Xbox One version in Japan because it sells so terribly. Alright. Don't want to do that. So I'm gonna do this.
To me, fairy friends. I'll
And
take
then
care
do
of them.
this. Then end the turn. Here's that game de-leveled, which really does look like it is just a simplistic puzzle game. One of those games where you bounce through the portals to go up and down, up and down. It's not out yet on Steam, but it's coming out, I guess. Yeah. You kind of bounce things around. And this concept was slightly interesting the first time I saw it, but then it lost pretty much all interest after like even that first game. Like, because I don't think they really did anything with that concept as a game. And then we can see the beginning of the end now. Here we have a game on Steam called Tropicalia, which says it's a 2020 game, but if you had told me that this was a Super NES game, I would have believed you. There's a danger of something that looks like an NES, Super NES game set in kind of a Native American looking world, although it also kind of feels like it's almost a Hawaiian world, so it seems like it's kind of all over the place. They're calling it a Soulsvania JRPG set in prehistoric Brazil. Interesting. English, early access, 10% off for $8.09. English, Portuguese, Brazil. I don't know historic Portuguese Brazil or prehistoric Brazil, so I don't know if any of this is accurate, but it doesn't seem to me like it's accurate. And it really does feel like this is just another one of these Brazilian games that are kind of low effort scams. The poor Brazilian people, they just have like no prospects for honest earning and honest living, and in all fairness, the whole world may be like them sooner than we think, but a lot of people have just resolved to desperate pleas or desperate attempts to make money or desperate attempts to be successful in any way they can, and often it does come up feel like a scam or is literally a scam.
Stay away.
Moving on, we have Gamatsu. Here we have a Blade Runner Enhanced Edition with updated cinematics trailer, which Night Dive Studios re-releasing Blade Runner. I think we had mentioned that before, but I kind of just so much announcements happen and come and go. Like Blade Runner, its footage was in part, I think, live action imagery and early 3D imagery. So, yeah, I'm not seeing major differences here. Maybe just a little bit of a pass, but this hardly feels like it's a deep level super sampling of the characters. I'm not even really able to tell which of the characters which side here is the enhanced edition. Now, one of the things about Blade Runner, which makes it a very replayable game, is the idea. Yeah, I cannot even really tell the difference here. That any of the characters, or at least some of the characters, can in some runs be replicants, and in other runs they won't be replicants. So you do have this possibility of a replayability in a point-and-click adventure type game that you typically don't have in a point-and-click adventure. Even like Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, that has 3 different paths and maybe a few solutions for different puzzles. It's only really replayable about 3 or 4 times. It's not really worth potentially playing over and over again. And I imagine Blade Runner also. I imagine the main hitting points and the main story points still are fairly similar. So you very well may not get as much of an experience as you think you could. Of course, it does just make a real hard argument. Even though no games are coming out, it's still very difficult to justify going back and playing old games. Gamatsu's article here about Shadow Man remastered and having a second teaser trailer is also still a great argument of that, where like I totally want to cover this game because I played it when I was young, but this game also looks incredibly dark. It did even originally, so I don't, it will be a hard justification to find time to go back and play this. And this really is a great example of a game that should have been remade, not remastered. And they're showing off a lot of shooting and running and gunning, and I don't remember actually doing that much shooting and running and gunning. You did have a gun, but I definitely know you did have a gun in the game, and you knocked the souls out of people with your magic gun that was given to you, or the souls out of monsters. I'm not sure if it was people or monsters that you were even fighting, because you were like in the Shadow Realm, a Shadow Realm before Yu-Gi-Oh's Shadow Realm. But yeah, I imagine a lot of people looking at these graphics would not say for a second that they would want to play this game, and that definitely was the case originally when the game came out too, is that there was definitely a lot of people that looked at the graphics and the dark, macabre, adult only, I believe it was adult only rated game, and they were not well sold. Whereas I would have definitely made sure that Shadow Man and its comic book that I believe existed before the game were way more prevalent and way more well known before I tried to make a video game around it.
Abandon me.
I won't let you get away.
I walk my own path.
Is there anything else?
Just don't.
Nope. So play this, and play this. And then attack here. Gamatsu has an article here. Strife Veteran Edition is coming to Switch. A console port of the 1996 released first-person shooter RPG. That's another game that is old, certainly. And yeah, I'm not sure there's a justification in playing a Doom clone game that I don't recognize.
Let's play. Stay away.
Let's see. Evolve this.
This is the end.
And then attack here, and then attack here, play this,
Hey, let's play.
do this,
Hey, let's play.
and that was unlucky.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Clearly, Night Dive had a presentation. Gamatsu has an article, Iron Fury expansion pack has been announced. This is from 3D Realms and 1C Entertainment instead.
Stop it.
Iron Fury,
Stop it.
not a game that I think sold particularly well. We could look at their Steam page. It's actually labeled, I'm shocked here, it's labeled very positively and overwhelmingly positive overall. So people knew what they were getting and they liked it. I'm just kind of in a weird position here. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but $16.74 for what to me just looks like a Doom clone is a hard choice, certainly. It's a hard pill to swallow as a potential game that I would actually want to cover or even think about covering. But I definitely do know that there is a underrepresented fandom of people who are just trying to relive the Doom / Duke Nukem experiences, and that was what gaming was to them, and that they are definitely getting underserved if they did not transition into first-person shooter or 3D graphics style games like Call of Duty. Man, this takes so long. Just doing one pick 6 and one arena run is more than enough time for an entire stream. Moving on, we have Rise of the Triad Remaster announced for the PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC, which I think I've heard of this name and maybe seen this image. Do they have any gameplay on this footage, or is it just somebody playing it on a Switch? Yeah, it's just somebody playing it on a Switch.
My quarry won't escape that
And
easy.
Nature, grant me your strength.
it's, let's see, yeah, it's just an old 3D Realms Doom clone. Once again, there seems to be a reoccurring theme today of a lot of Doom clone style games. I also wanted to mention about LibRetro, on top of highlighting their web player. They are giving away Steam beta keys. I don't see any reason for me to specifically go begging and trying to get a Steam beta key, because I just wouldn't have time to play it. And so they gave out a lot of people a lot of keys for the Steam version of LibRetro, which I had not realized wasn't already available in kind of an open beta anyways on Steam. And I guess the only thing that we're really looking for and trying to see what will happen is if there is a
May the forest be at
like backlash, or if they get kicked off of Steam by Valve for some reason. That would be interesting, but not super surprising, because with LibRetro just being an application on Steam now, you are tacitly admitting that there's no longer a reason to for companies to try and list old versions of their games using like custom builds of using the DOSBox emulator or any other emulator, which Sega is kind of a great example of somebody who's been able to milk that concept over and over again, where they have intentionally just sold the same 25 or so Sega Genesis, Sega Mega Drive games, and not really put enough effort into it.
Let's play. Stay away. Help
me, fairies.
But you still won't really see an instance of ROMs being sold on Steam by Libretto. That's not going to happen. You might see companies like Sega eventually just say, hey, we're going to sell these ROMs directly, and maybe they'll just be able to sell them directly as DLC for Libretto and make it easier on everybody. I don't know if that would really serve much of an audience though. And I think you pretty much have to leave it the way it is and have some kind of, when you press the play button, some kind of custom built launcher that will let a emulator start playing your ROM, but then you can just include the ROM in an unmodified form as part of the program files that are installed, and the more technical people can then use that ROM to use Libretto if they care. It is really a different audience. The regular people, the average gamer is not going to go through the extra 5 minutes of setup that it would take to use Libretto. It's only going to be the enthusiast audience that does that.
Help me, fairies.
You can probably see too that this Forestcraft deck that I built that is in rotation is not anywhere as balanced or as successful, in my opinion, as the Forestcraft Unlimited deck I built. TechRept has an article here. A Fortnite streamer, Joey B, never heard of him, and the community help a troubled kid. I suppose this is one of those feel-good stories we could all use these days. But yeah, particularly I could see like streamers of Fortnite in particular, and Twitch streamers needing some good press. Although at a certain point, is this just a case where Joey B has hired a good publicity agent? Yeah, I was looking at an article that literally said like the best companies, the companies that treat their employees the best in the United States, and I'm like, all right, this feels like advertisement. This feels like these companies just have good press people, and the names of the companies that were named without remembering any specific number, any one of them, were companies that are notorious for treating the customer pretty terribly. So unless the argument is that companies treat their employees really well, also therefore they have companies that treat their employees very well also treat the customers terribly, which maybe there is some point to that. Like if you are in a company that says the customers are always right, you tend to then not have any power to fight back as an employee who's being mistreated. Whereas if you're in a company that says, well, we'll side with the employee here every now and then over a customer, maybe you do get a little bit more respect that way.
For nature's sake.
Of course, I've also worked at jobs that treated the customer terribly and the employee terribly, so let's not forget that possibility exists too. Therefore, there must be an opposite possibility somewhere too that treats the customers well and the employees well, but I didn't see any companies like that. And personally, I would say if you have a company getting published in a magazine saying we treat our employees very well, I feel like they're probably blowing their own horn way more than it's actually true in a scenario like that. And yeah, I guess I could have gone to glassdoor.com and looked at the complaints of all those companies and seen how true that was as an article if I really cared, but I didn't. And that definitely was a Labor Day article. A Labor Day article trying to be pro corporate and pro late stage capitalism instead of realizing that no, the corporations are the bad guys in Labor Day and every day besides Labor Day.
Grant me power.
Yeah, I'm gonna just get wrecked by this again. This
Let's play.
lets me do something.
ガイド役失格です。
Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Hand-drawn crime noir first-person shooter Fallen Aces has been announced for PC. This looks like it might be something of interest. Let's see. This reminds me, Archer has decided to have a new season, finally. And it seems like they've finally gotten it back to these seasons telling the stories that were originally telling where Archer was a spy, because there had been several spin-off seasons where Archer was like in a coma and he was dreaming other scenarios, and they were just kind of goofing around for entire seasons and doing something different, and it definitely lost a lot of interest there. And see, I'm not sure I have
I will protect my people.
any argument in my head to go back and watch any new episodes of Archer. And I suppose there's a danger that could happen to something like Rick and Morty too, is that they could just take so long to make new episodes that I'd just finally write the whole thing off and say, yeah, it's not really worth the effort to try and stay up to date and watch a series like that. That's a problem with a lot of Western cartoon comedy adult things, is that they just don't have the budget to hire enough people to animate everything at a reasonable in a reasonable amount of time. They need 2 or 3 teams just constantly animating. And sure, the Japanese companies accomplish that by underpaying and overworking the animators, but there is at least some consistency in what in the release dates of most anime series.
Time to shine, Daria.
Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article here. Dusk's Mamma Mia Flesh Palace brings Mario-inspired arena, which, yeah, this is like an arena based on the Mario Castle, if you can look past all of the explosions and redness. Okay, I don't know if this is really a game. But Dusk apparently is also coming to the Switch for that crossover, which it's yet another Doom clone or Quake clone. I'd say Dusk is almost certainly a Quake clone for as fast as it was moving.
Don't hurt me.
Let's see. ScumVM put out a blog thing. They will, the next version of ScumVM will support Discord Rich Present, so you can show off all your friends that you're playing ScumVM and the exact game you're playing. But to make the most of this feature, they need game icons, which honestly ScumVM needed game icons from the beginning, but I imagine they don't have the copyright permission to use any internal icons that might have already existed. Well, they probably could get around that anyways, for that, but they're looking for more, certainly. And they've made a GitHub here of ScumVM-icons, and under the icons folder we can see there's a lot of PNGs, but to actually see the PNG on GitHub you'd have to click on it, and these might very well just be like cleaned up cut versions of other icons. I hope that the ScumVM uses the icons in its own launcher more than just also on as a Discord thing, because I don't honestly think that there's a lot going on with Discord these days. I think it will stick around and be as successful for running your own little forum, but I think in general it has not succeeded in becoming a game storefront, which is what it was trying to do, or succeeded in being a replacement for things like Facebook groups or Reddit. So there's a lot of...
Let's play. Hey, let's play.
Help me, fairies.
Alright, this one
Stay away.
just won't take any damage, or will only take a certain amount of damage per hit. Yeah, it seems to be limited. No more than 4 damage at a time. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article here. Brutal Fate will blast you in January of 2021. Yet another Doom style game. This is from the Brutal Doom mod creator, and this does look like a more modern take on a Doom game instead of just looking exactly like a Doom game. But there still seems to be kind of a flatness and a low polygon look for a lot of this stuff. Well, in a weird way, that community, that somewhat niche community, does seem like they are hitting a point of success, and they are going to get some games that will
People are evil. Stay away.
will actually
Help me, fairies.
keep them entertained for this year at least. I guess the real question is, could we turn something like that into a continuing process? This guy has nothing they can do. Well, maybe they do have something they can do. In fact, they may beat me right now, because there's a lot of cards that work around the idea of Earth Sigil.
They're picking on me.
I should have used one of these to destroy one of these. But maybe we can still win here. This guy is Storm.
I'm gonna rest for a bit.
Okay. So we do this. We summon 2 of these. Okay. And then that's pretty much all we can do. So we kill this guy, kill this guy, kill that guy. Evolve one of
I
these.
won't let you get away.
So spark.
Attack here. Attack here. And it probably would have been beneficial to kill one of those. TechRaptor has an article here. Super Mario 3D All-Stars is the second best selling game of the year on Amazon, which might be a indication of just how low sales have secretly been for video games this year. Yep. It seems like even people who haven't played these games, at least from one story I've heard, are kind of hyped about these old Mario games. And in all fairness, like 3 more video Mario games would always be interesting to me when I was a kid and a Nintendo fanboy. Yeah, regardless of how actual old they were. That's not gonna do anything. I've lost. Yeah. If you just have a Switch and that was your first
Nice
console,
marksmanship.
you've literally only played Super Mario Odyssey as far as Mario games. So going back and playing Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and Mario Galaxy 1 just quadruples the number of Mario games you've played. The new Super Mario Land may have been available on the Switch. And it certainly does open up the door to the idea that next year they could release a trilogy of like Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, and Wind Waker for Zelda and quadruple all the Zelda games, because if you've only had a Switch, you've only been able to play Breath of the Wild and the remake of the Game Boy game, which is a very different Zelda game. And it certainly then opens up the possibility that they could release Metroid Prime 1, 2, and 3 in a trilogy. That is, of course, on the huge caveat that Nintendo is going to be generous and actually do any of that, which we don't know if they actually are going to do any of that. And even 3 years down the line, they may still be trying to struggle to make the next Metroid Prime game. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Idle Expanse. Looks like it's a top-down, team-based kind of Gauntlet clone. Top-down twin-stick shooter. Really, for lack of a better term. There is certainly... This is free to play, but it has a whole bunch of DLC. And says a single player only, which then why are there multiple people on your side of the field? And it's 69 achievements, so it seems like it's an achievement game. There is definitely concern, though, that Nintendo is just going to be incredibly greedy if they even do re-release other products, because there's really no reason to have this artificial scarcity in both the physical and the digital forms of this new Mario collection. The only reason that they would do that I can see is because they're gonna try and not cannibalize their sales for some other game that they have already scheduled to be released in 6 months. But the idea of creating something like a Nintendo Vault as an equivalent of a Disney Vault to bring things back and then take them away, bring things back and take them away, is not something that I think people want to see. And we've already seen some of that with the re-releases of eShop versions of NES and Super NES games, and they tried that whole crazy the whole crazy Nintendo subscription service, which I suppose still exists, although I don't think anybody's really thrilled enough about it to talk about it anymore. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. They have a review for Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning. Let's see what they had to say about it. This visually looks interesting enough. Is this as a MMO? Though it kind of looks like one. Scrolling down, you're seeing a lot of screenshots. They gave it a 6.5. Divorced from the original chaotic development, Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning feels like a remix of old game trends that are pleasant, if a bit generic. At 6.5, that's pretty low. Pros are beautiful, colorful art direction and satisfying action RPG. Combat, cons are generic fantasy world and plot, and a repetitive MMO-style quest design. Well, that certainly is not a glowing enough review to make me want to play Kingdoms of Amalur Re-Reckoning. Gamma Sutra has an article. EA has removed intrusive ads from the UFC 4 following fan complaints. And yeah, I'm sure they'll try and push their luck the next time. Apparently they were advertising The Boys Season 2, which, knowing how The Boys Season 1 just kind of ended on a cliffhanger, I really don't have any faith that the next season isn't going to end on a cliffhanger. So,
The hunt has only begun.
like so many other products made by Amazon Prime and Netflix and other services like that, it's becoming more and more of an issue to just wait until the entire series has happened before you even start to watch it. I feel like Netflix in particular has gotten rather bad about that, particularly when you know that Netflix has said that they never just immediately greenlight new seasons. So the developers should be wrapping up each season, and they really aren't. Lucifer's new season was particularly bad about that too, ending on a huge cliffhanger. Well, do I want to do anything more? When you do this, I guess
The forest abandoned me.
that'll work.
I won't let you get away.
I walk my own path. Just don't.
Hey, let's play.
Do that.
Let's play.
And is that enough to get ward? Probably not. Like, it's so hard to get this to do 4 other cards. And I really wouldn't want to build a Forcecraft deck built around that concept of playing a lot of cards where you have to play 4 other cards. Even though I am mostly playing 1 mana fairies, it's still too difficult because you can only have 5 characters on the field at one time, and you're not going to get a bunch of 0/0 wisps unless you build a deck specifically around that idea.
Better than in the cradle.
Okay. So if I do this, and then do this, and that, and that. Next we have a game on Steam called Conjurer Andy's Repeatable Dungeon, which kinda seems like it might be a little bit redundant. Let's see, it's $7.99, bunch of languages, and I just don't know on this one, so I'll just have to put it on the follow list and see if this is a game where you literally just go through the same dungeon over and over again, and whether this is kind of like an idle clicker game. It's being tagged as a card game. I don't see any card elements, and tagged as a roguelike. So yeah, I'll leave this on the follow list, see if people review it well or not. Okay, I've got to do this, I think. It's just better to do that. Do that. And then we'll kill that. And then we'll do that. Gamma Sutra has an article here. A Nintendo eShop policy change gives shoppers more time to cancel pre-orders. You can opt out of a pre-order up to 1 week before launch, which honestly that still doesn't change much, because if you are going to opt out on a pre-order, it's probably because you're hearing reviews that are happening just a few days or a day before the game is launched. It's not fairly typical that there's a launch a review a week before a game comes out. Although sometimes I guess that happens. I really don't pay enough attention to tell you one way or the other on that, actually, because I don't follow the launch dates of games. Moving on, Gamatsu has a PS Vita article here. Root Double Before Crime After Days Extended Edition for PS Vita has a limited physical print announced, which Root Double, I guess, is Root Film and Root Letter.
Stop it.
Or maybe this is a completely separate game. But it's pretty crazy to have a Vita game announced. And you're definitely getting some kind of DVDs in this physical edition on top of Vita games. Because the Vita games are just little cartridges. Yeah, very, very odd to see a Vita game once again still available.
Let's play.
Fate binds us all.
I may fall asleep right after the stream. Yeah, my insomnia is still all over the place.
Nice marksmanship.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Jung's Labyrinth, which looks interesting visually. It looks fairly polished in some screenshots, and then it also looks fairly asset flippy in some other screenshots. They're calling it a horror mystery dungeon. $16.14, English only. I wouldn't have been surprised if this was an Asian game based on the name and the ninja there. I'll put this on the follow list, but I bet this is an asset flip thing more than it's really indicating. So we got exactly 0 wins, so we will be in Group B of the tournament. But that was a free entry, so getting 30 gold is sort of worth it, but that's a lot of effort, certainly. And the daily quests certainly become an issue. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm going to start a private match. Just a regular private match. And since there's a daily quest to win a private match, you would have to type in this match ID and challenge me, and then I would like to play somebody and I'd like them to let me win. As far as what deck I'll play, for fun, we'll just play the Bloodcraft deck. So we're ready on that thing. Random starting. So if anybody wants to join in that before I'm done with the news, of which there's about 10 more articles, that would be great. If that doesn't happen, that's fine too. And we may very well end up doing this a lot going forward, because this is a fairly good idea I just thought up, of just letting random people connect to me and play me, if I'm just gonna sit and talk about the last few articles anyways. So Gamasutra has an article, join Wuga as a Unity game engineer. Haven't heard of Wuga. It's Berlin, Germany as a company. Yeah, I imagine that it's a lot more difficult right now than it would have been a year ago to potentially start as a programmer or work as a programmer abroad, particularly if you're in the United States or live in the United States. Next, we have a game called Zero Killed on Steam, which, yeah, looks like a first-person shooter. Is it a VR shooter only? It requires VR. It's $14.99, which is about the right price. It's English full audio. Okay, well, there is something here to be said as far as this actually looks like a first-person shooter, which almost makes a good argument about like how Half-Life Alyx was not so much focused on being a shooter when it probably could have been. We have 11 reviews that make it very positive in the last 30 days, but it's mixed overall, so they probably fixed some issue, would be my guess. But yeah, Zero Killed looks like a real game for VR. Street Fighter had a costume design contest, and I think it's probably worth showing off who won. So, in a funny way, I think Street Fighter V has been kind of reluctant to have some wild, scantily clad characters, and this has been throughout the history of a lot of arcade and fighting games where they just don't want that much skin showing. So I wouldn't be surprised if this costume gets turned into a real costume for Japan, and it's very similar to this, and then it gets fairly censored when it comes to the rest of the world. And I'm not sure if you really will have different palette swaps. And then you have here I think this is what they call Yankee style, kind of Yakuza, beat 'em up gangster character outfit. You can definitely take note that of the two winners, it's it's just female characters being shown. So nobody's really interested in dressing up the male characters, which, yeah, that makes sense. Next, we have a game on Steam called The Warlin Heroes, which looks like a Chinese card game, if I was to guess. Seems to be fairly simplistic, and once again, it feels like one of those games that has a lot of text in it. $6.99 English and Chinese. Although, in all fairness, I think we can say today this is probably the only Chinese game we've seen that's even a little low quality. I think this is the only Chinese game we've seen at all today. So over the weekend, we just didn't get around a lot of those. We may get over this week several more. Gamatsu has an article here. Power Rangers Battle for the Grid DLC character Lauren Shiba launches September 15th, which I guess it's worth mentioning that the Power Rangers series Battle for the Grid fighting game seems to be continuing to try. I have no idea who this character is. She's clearly from a Power Ranger series that was much later, and I don't recognize her at all. She clearly is from like the ninja straight up outfits. But yeah, I guess if you did have some nostalgia for the original Power Ranger series, there might be a argument to playing something like Battle for the Grid and learning about some of the other characters without actually sitting through all of the Power Ranger episodes. Yeah, it would be pretty crazy to decide to watch all Power Ranger episodes that have ever aired. You would definitely want to fast forward through the good ones. And there probably is a list out there of like, hey, just watch this episode and this episode and this episode. It'll take you maybe 15 hours to want to go through 4 or 5 years of shows. Particularly when you're talking about a Monster of the Week series. Here we have a TechRaptor article that linked to a game called Postal Brain Damaged, and I am not authorized to access the page now on TechRaptor, so they must have taken it down or leaked it early. From what I vaguely recall, Postal Brain Damage is coming out. Gamatsu has it here still. Retro style first person shooter Postal Brain Damaged, announced for consoles and PCs. As I guess I don't think this is the Postal 4 that has been in development. Instead, this seems to be like a zombie spin-off. And I'm not even sure if this really fits into the mentality of what a Postal game is. And I'm not sure that there really is a reason to play any Postal games at all. So it's worth mentioning, but it is still probably not that interesting. This is also a great point to mention that private matches really suck in Shadowverse, and having a quest and achievement around winning private matches is a pain in the butt, and you really do have to go to the Reddit private match thread for Shadowverse and just get people to type in your code. Otherwise, you will not get a random private match person to play you. Here we have a game on Steam, Escape Room Der Krinky College, which, being called Escape Room, I assume it's an escape room with what looks like just a bunch of asset flip stuff. Doesn't look terrible by any means. Is this a student project? It's free. No, it doesn't say it's a student project though. Several languages with a third-party EULA, and it's a free game, so check it out if you're interested. There's no reason for me to review a game that's free. There was a promotion, I think, from Gamma Sutra for Game Jam Plus, which they're trying to have. The idea of having a game jam is kind of crazy in the current climate, and it seems like it is not just a remote thing by any means. Where I think remote game jams would make a lot more sense, but then it also counters the general idea of a game jam, which is getting a bunch of people together to work together over a short period of time. I would also argue, though, that there's been far too many game jams and far too many video games that have then been put on sale or listed on Steam that were made in game jams, where perhaps game jams should be more of a secret event for game developers only, and their games are never shown and they are never tried to sold, and that they are just like programming experiences. And it's kind of like cross education, if anything. It'd be the equivalent if you had like one school system send a bunch of teachers to a convention where several other school systems were going to be there, and they were going to work together and like cross train on how things are done here and there. And there's an idea to that. Certainly, but game jams, I think, have taken it in a weird direction. And I don't know if school systems ever do anything like that. There probably should be a teachers' convention of some sort in every state where teachers are sent to be trained and cross-promoted and learn things, but I bet it doesn't happen as much as it should. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hunted, which to me looks like a dark screenshot game where you're hunting a bear. or the bear is hunting you, and that seems to be it. 99 cents English full on you. I did modify the picture settings on my TV, by the way, so it was just so blown out on that first way I had changed the settings, but now I've got it, I think, fairly nice looking. But there still are plenty of games that look like they are just dark screenshot games, and I don't think that has anything to do with the actual brightness on my monitor. I think that has a lot to do with just how the game is designed in general. Next we have what looks like a VR game here called Stride, where you're running and gunning in a way you typically wouldn't expect. It seems to be like a parkour game where there's either some kind of like gray blight that is chasing you, or you're marking where you've walked. This is another one of those examples of a parkour demo that is available either on Unity or Unreal that is so well designed it makes asset flip games look like real games. And this totally does look like a real game. This looks like a better Mirror's Edge than Mirror's Edge. And Mirror's Edge technology and their parkouring idea was groundbreaking when it came out. So this requires VR though. It's $19.99. It's English full audio. I'm going to put it on the fall list. You can see it's mostly positive now, and it's labeled as an endless runner, so I assume that's the case. But yeah, you can definitely see that there's been so much progress in the parkour movement. But unfortunately, we've also hit a point of saturation where you almost certainly wouldn't see all of these parkour movements combined together in a single game. You might take wall running and add it to a standard first-person shooter, or you might take grappling an edge and put it in a first-person shooter, but you're not going to probably have swinging from a rope and shooting and wall running and potential double jumps. Yep. And at a certain point, I think there was perhaps an overemphasis, particularly in the first Mirror's Edge, around the idea of controlling your body and lifting up your legs and not hitting barbed wire, and there's just such an emphasis on the running and parkouring mechanic that it got in the way of the actual gameplay and the story a little bit. There definitely were some sections of Mirror's Edge 1 where you just hit a point where you had to get up a wall and you had to do it fairly fast, otherwise you just get caught by the police and lose. Here we have Marvel's Avengers on Steam. We've talked enough about that, I think, that we can just put this on the follow list. It is labeled as mostly positive, but there's also some major financial issues here, and the fact that really, if you wanted to play this game, you need the deluxe upgrade of $79.98, and then they're going to add new characters, and the new characters are going to cost, I think, $10. So this really feels like a game that is just going to try and nickel and dime you for all of eternity. And particularly, I would have liked to see Crystal Dynamics and Eidos and Square Enix all working on something better, whether it was a Marvel's property or not, than coming out with something that is just about monetization. And of course, we could have some real weirdness if Disney actually ran out of money, but I don't think that would really affect Marvel or anything anytime soon. Let's see. Here we have a bundle here called Super Simulation, which I think we had already talked about this as a bundle, so I bet we don't have any new bundles on the Humble Bundle. They have a Humble Comics bundle for the boys, which I think that might be worth mentioning. Let's see. The Boys Volume 1, Name the Game. The Black Terror Volume 1. The Boys Volume 2. Project Superpowers 1. Project Superpowers X-Man. Xmas Carol, not X-Man. And then if you pay over $8, you get Volume 3, Volume 4, Volume 5, Volume 6, and Volume 7 of The Boys. And then you get The Boys Dear Becky Volume 1 and Project Superpowers Volume 2, The Black Terror Volume 2, and The Owl. What is the publisher on this? Dynamite Entertainment. Must be a fairly smaller publisher, or I just haven't heard of it. If you pay $15, then you get The Boys Volume 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And Dear Becky Volume 2. Project Superpowers Chapter 2 Volume 2, Volume 1 and 2. The Black Terror Volume 3. Meet the Bad Guys. Masquerade. And The Death-Defying Devil. So, these are ebooks. Certainly. So, yeah, there's something around that idea. I guess if you wanted to read the comics, that probably is a decent bundle. If the TV show has got you interested. I don't think the TV show really tells a story that's that interesting, because to me it just kind of feels like the Watchmen series all over again, just done slightly different. Let's see, they have a 1E Entertainment or 1C publishing bundle, which has some games here. Hammock is about the only one I would really recognize. And then if you pay $6.96, more games I don't recognize. And then if you pay $12, more games that I mostly don't recognize, except for like Deep Space Derelicts. So if there's 2 game bundles that we've already talked about, that, yeah, there aren't any others, and there won't be probably any more for this month. More and more it is really coming down to that point where the game bundles are not really good bundles on Humble Bundle, or they just have games that I've never heard of, never wanted to play, have no chance of really ever being interested. Let's see. Apparently you can unlock Officer Dick in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2, according to TechRaptor. They have a how to unlock video. You can also unlock the alien in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. What else? As I go down my Twitter feed. It's not super video game related, but it is somewhat video game related. That apparently Vince McMahon has literally told all of the quote-unquote contractors that all the wrestlers that they can no longer associate with things like TikTok and Twitch and any other social media sites. I assume that might also be Twitter. It'll be a interesting potential court case, I suppose, that might happen, in the sense that they are contractors and he is literally telling them what they can do. He's limiting their ability to get other work potentially by limiting their communications, and he's literally telling them what to do outside of their jobs and the specific contract of their jobs, which would be I assume contractors probably in this case would be contracting out each individual fight that they were in, and it's hardly like anybody was getting super successful or super popular on those platforms. They were just mostly doing it for fun. And yeah, this on one hand, it is an interesting thought because you probably should at some point, if you are an actual employer paying actual either salaried or hourly employees instead of contractors, you probably should implement a somewhat restrictive social media policy. I think the best policy, as I've thought about it if I was the boss, would be to say, we're not going to look at your social media posts, but you're responsible to make sure that none of your social media posts ever come back and affect the business. If we ever feel like your social media posts have reflected badly on our business or affected our business negatively in any way, then we are going to let you go. Now, if that's a contract employer, that's a little harder to get the verbiage right there so that would actually be legally acceptable. But if you're a at-will employee, that's easy to say, certainly, is we're just going to let you go and we're not going to back you and we're not going to fight for you. Which is a very fair I think way to go about it, to say, hey, we're not going to go try and censor you and look up things you posted 10 years ago. But if somebody finds that and that comes back and reflects badly on our business, at our sole discretion, we're not going to back you. We're almost certainly not going to back you. Maybe we would back some things, but we won't. But I guess the best way to say that is you have absolutely zero guarantee that we will back you, and you have a high risk of being let go based on your old tweets. But I think there is a kind of new social media social contract in there that has to be created because it's too extreme pro-censorship and just cancel culture to have every single job waste of some HR person's time, probably an HR person that didn't need to be employed in the first place, to have that HR person going through everybody's social media decades in the past and watching it as new posts show up. And ideally, as an employee, you should just say, I'm not on any social media. I'm not on any, period. Deny it. And if they do find like a profile that you are on, you just say, that's not me, that's some imposter. That's an ex-boyfriend, that's an ex-girlfriend impersonating me. That's the easiest way to solve that problem as an employee. But yeah, it's far too extreme to have an employer try and censor and scour the minds and the posts of all the employees, and it's far too extreme in the other direction to say a employer should have absolutely no reaction whatsoever if there is potentially millions upon millions of cancel culture people banging on their door, giving you bad reviews and harassing all the employees at the entire company. And that's really where it would come down to, is like, say somebody puts something on their social media, on Facebook or something, and that one person now has caused this entire poop storm to happen to hundreds if not thousands of other employees who they had to work with. That's not fair to the other employees, that one person has created so much conflict. And sometimes it really just does boil down to the needs of the whole versus the needs of the one. Well, that's going to be it for the stream. There really wasn't anything else on Twitter. Just going to get worse and worse, I think, as far as getting daily victories to get 400 gems and getting all these solo player missions stuff. That all needs to get taken away. We might hit a point after a week or two of not getting solo player missions, we might hit a point where it is just winning private matches over and over again, and that may be so much more frustrating than just going and playing the tutorial levels in the single player. It may very well be easier to play the single player. Like right now, winning one private match for 30 is probably just as hard as winning 5 matches in general for 30, because I could spend less than 35 minutes to play the tutorial missions in the solo missions to do that. And let's just open a pack. Let's end on the pack opening. Sure, we're still getting 2 or 3 packs every 2 or 3 days, but so we got a gold, but maybe not a new gold. So let's go over here, look at our cards, and liquefy all the extras, which we haven't done in a while. So we're up to 5,000. Yeah, one of the games I'm playing also has this kind of double click issue, but it's on the controller. So yeah, I don't know why that would happen, but just every 100 clicks or so on the controller, every time I it'll just randomly press the A button twice. And that really sucks because it happens fairly frequently enough that it skips over dialogue. And that's about the only thing Battleship Brigade has going for it. So we're up to 74 pages of cards now, of what I believe is 113 pages in total. Although it does get confused, certainly still, by just that. So we got a 3rd copy of an animated version of that is new. And yeah, because you double the amount of cards being shown as you start getting the animated ones. Still have plenty of things that are temporary cards also. And no real reason to use the temporary gems. I think in the next expansion we'll start to think about doing that. We'll just have to make a rough estimate on what we think would be good to get. That may be the only new card we had. I thought I had a higher card there. There is a certain point here, though, where there's just too many cards. And I will say, getting the Code Geass skins did not really improve that. The idea of having like Fiery Embrace and then a Code Geass skin of Fiery Embrace, and then theoretically a basic card that could become an animated card later, so we'll have 3 copies of that. That doesn't really help things. I guess maybe there's a way to filter that out, but I don't know how you would do it off the top of my head. Let's look at that. Yeah. If you wanted to filter, you could do it, I guess, by not clicking promo and just clicking everything else. And that might be a way to solve your issue. And I guess you could filter just to normal cards instead of animated cards, or if you at some point got animated cards, And I guess at some point I should consider starring cards. How do you even star a card? Game? How does one star a card? Oh, to star a card you have to actually own it. So you can't, it can't be a temporary thing. Interesting. Yeah, we're up to 149. So we're halfway there. Interesting. And according to my timer, it's only been 2 hours and 35 minutes on the stream, and boy does it feel like it's been 3.5 hours. But some of that may just be the heat too. Like, it is definitely getting hot these days. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.